Alright guys, welcome, and ladies of course. If you are watching this video, you are watching from my public YouTube channel, and I appreciate you being here very much, and I certainly do believe you are in the right place at the right time to hear, what I'm going to be speaking about, to receive this information. And what we're going to be talking about is how to forgive people. This is something that is so important when it comes to the path of spiritual self-development and when it comes to just being authentic in general. So many human beings are very inauthentic. They're identified with protective adaptations within the psyche that are heavily rooted in trauma. And we're not our trauma, we'll never be our trauma. So if we have an identity construct that is in association with trauma, is rooted in trauma, then we are not being authentic. A lot of people have belief systems and perceptions that they're very, very attached to, and they're a part of these defensive adaptations within the psyche that are rooted in basically defending them from early childhood trauma. And when it comes to forgiveness, it could be very hard for this kind of person, especially because of these limiting programs in the subconscious and the protective adaptations as well, which are basically what is known as fragmentation within the psyche. This fragmentation causes separation. So for this kind of person, it is very hard to see that even a person that's manifesting in their reality, posing as an enemy, is actually their best friend and is an evolutionary catalyst that they manifested to serve their evolutionary process, to serve them in letting go of something, to serve them in providing a contrast, to serve them in embracing and experiencing their shadow parts. And that other person who you might be perceiving to be an enemy is acting as a significant trigger to bring up suppressed emotional resonance from these shadow parts, so it could be felt. And through the feeling process is also going to come a release, and with that release we have more room to be who we really are. But if we're identified with these very rigid ways of thinking and protective adaptations within the psyche that are in association with fragmentation, well, we're not going to be able to raise our frequency. We're not going to be able to be a more authentic version of ourselves because we're still operating from the false self and not the core self or the truly authentic self that we got disconnected from when we experienced the fragmentation in the psyche, which is in connection to early childhood trauma that we went through. And when it comes to early childhood trauma, it will store itself in the body, in the energetic field, and in the subconscious, unconscious regions of the mind in general, and it will actually externalize itself in different ways and into different actual physical forms. That person you can't stand at work may be reflecting your trauma back to you. That person who is smear campaigning you on the internet and got all their friends to say stuff about you that's not entirely true, well, that could be a trauma projection or a shadow projection. And this is actually giving you a chance to see that shadow part of yourself in that other person, to own it, to connect with it with pure presence rather than running away from it, which is what a lot of us do until we become aware of these things. And by connecting with it in a state of pure presence, you're now releasing it, and you're also raising your frequency and depolarizing the negative mass that some of these fragmentations in your psyche are holding, which are going to set the stage to where you're not manifesting these same kinds of enemies and these same kinds of realities, which can seem like they're separate from you, but they're not. They are your own creation. And when you understand that everything is your own creation, even the things that on an ego mind level you think you don't desire to experience, but on a subconscious level, you're pulling the strings and you're actually creating the theme of whatever is manifesting. When you take ownership for whatever is manifesting and you see it as your own creation, this is when forgiveness actually becomes possible. The inability to forgive people is always going to come from polarization to a protective adaptation, which usually comes with like an identity, and as well a belief system or a perception that is rooted usually, within the subconscious, but of course it can also be a protective adaptation as well, that has the belief system or has the way of thinking or a certain way of perceiving the world. When you're identified with these belief systems, you're not going to be able to forgive the person because the belief system is in association with what you are not. But when you see it as your creation, now forgiveness becomes much easier. And it becomes much easier because why would you be mad at somebody for longer than you need to be if you understand that you're creating the experience to serve you? You're creating the experience to provide contrast. You're creating the experience to help you maybe let go of the rigid identity complex that isn't you. Let go of the belief, maybe a belief in separation. And now you keep creating these themes that are meant to push you back into the source consciousness. They're meant to show you your fragmentations, because the chances are, if you've manifested a bitter enemy who's coming against you, they're heavily driven by trauma and fragmentations within their psyche, and this is where the narrative pops up into their mind that they need to come against you, that they need to smear campaign you, that they need to harm you in whatever way they are trying to do that. So you may be identified with certain fragmentations, so you manifest someone who mirrors that back to you so you can see it in yourself, feel through any emotions that may be associated with your inner process, and let go of identifying with the fragmentation, which once again, it's going to have to do with a belief system, a perception, and an identity. So when you let go of this, now you really begin to sink into that true self energy, which is actually always going to be unconditional love and always experiences itself as being all things and as being the creator. The true self does not know victimhood, and it doesn't know outside of the self. It experiences everything as its own internal state because it knows that everything that we're experiencing in the third density plane is an illusion, and it's a holographic projection of our overall internal energetic state. So at the highest levels of consciousness, there's really nothing that's actually outside of self, and this is why as a higher self we create a simulated reality where we are holographically projecting aspects, of ourself, aspects of the fragmented human character into reality so we can experience those fragments in a hands-on way and then go through a depolarizing process of that fragmentation. So when somebody is posing in your path as an enemy, a lot of times this is going to be in connection to fragmentation that has taken place within your psyche due to unhealed trauma that is existing in your system. And this person is acting as a trigger to bring up that trauma, to bring up the suppressed emotional resonance that's in association with it, because by feeling it and acknowledging it with the power of pure presence, it will depolarize that and release it, so you don't have to keep creating these kinds of realities to release these things from your body and from your energetic field, because now there is no longer the need. And the more you experience, or I should say, reconnect with the source energy that you fragmented from, the more you're going to be able to forgive people, because you don't see whatever is going on as being imposed on you. You see it as an interaction with another version of yourself, or an interaction with a wounded part of yourself, or an experience that you're creating to provide contrast, so you can let go of something, so you can connect with your shadow, so you can better embody your light. Sometimes we create catalysts to refine the way we connect with our authentic self, to refine the way we connect with our higher self. And a lot of what we experience in our lives are going to be predefined themes that on a higher self level we create for ourselves to experience for some really deep evolutionary reasons. And all of it, no matter why it's manifesting, is always meant to serve us. So when we know this, now we're not hanging on to, anger. We're not hanging on to hatred. We're not thinking we need to hurt the person or destroy the person or anything like that. And, I'm not saying don't be angry, because chances are, if you keep manifesting something that makes you really angry, that anger is already in your system and you're creating a trigger to bring the anger up. So rather than avoiding it, which is probably what you've been doing, or using some type of unhealthy coping to bypass it, now you have to sit with it. Now you have to feel it. And by feeling it, you're now releasing it, and you're depolarizing that anger from your system. And what you're doing is you're turning the shadows into the light of a healthy sense of, self-identity, a healthy way of expressing yourself, and just, you're experiencing and you're creating more room within yourself to experience more of that higher self energy, channeling that through your physical body and through your nervous system. But to actually get to that, we could say, nervous system level of operation that we need to get to actually contain the energy of the higher self, which is a very high frequency energy, we actually have to, create triggers that are going to resurface suppressed negative energy that's in the body and, existing on a nervous system level, so we can bring it up to the surface and then we can release it. And this just gives us more of an ability to be who and what we really are, and to go through a remembrance of why we incarnated here in the first place. And we actually incarnated to experience a lot of the negatives that we experience as human beings. So this could be sickness, this could be illness, this could be bitter enemies, or maybe we attract people that are very jealous into our lives. Actually, I don't want to say attract, because we're the creator, we're not an attractor. Everything is us pushed out. So, maybe we create an experience where people are very jealous, and there's a reason why we're doing this. It's never for nothing. And once again, when we look at it from this perspective, we're not going to hang on to that anger. We're not going to be bitter. We're not going to over-identify with a protective adaptation that tells us, fuck that person. And now anybody that reminds us of that person, we're not going to trust, and we're not going to let anyone in. This is what a lot of people end up doing. And this is never going to be a healthy way of existing. This is never going to be authentic. And it's always just going to be a mask that the person is wearing. Because at our core, we are forgiveness. We are unconditional love. And we are, everyone that we're experiencing in the so-called outside world. Even the enemy. Even the person that wants to destroy us. And, I would say a lot of the time, or at least just let's say sometimes for now, on a higher self level, we make these soul contracts with people to act as significant evolutionary catalysts for us, so we have an opportunity to remember that we are a higher self having a human experience, and that we don't have to worry, we don't have to stress. We have orchestrated all these themes for the betterment and for the expansion of our own consciousness. So when we know this, we can let go and we can forgive and we can extract the positive out of the negative that we're creating that is showing up in that other person, showing up as some form of abuse. Ladies and gentlemen, we are the creator. There is no such thing as a victim in the universe. We are consciousness creating experiences that we want to have for ourselves. And the more we accept this and the more we come to this realization, the more we can take from any negative a positive. And that's why we're creating that negative. So that's what I wanted to share today. Thank you very much for being here. If this video found you, it's absolutely for a reason. Drop down in the comments and let me know how you feel about this, and I will certainly catch you in the next video.